Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer. So, on today's live stream, I welcome Paul Allen. What's up, Paul? Thanks for joining, man.
Hey, Keith. Absolutely, Keith. I'm honored to be here.
So, Paul has been in the hobby for nearly 20 years. That's a long time, Paul. And is currently the president of the Boston Reefers Society. So we're going to be talking a lot about local reef clubs and how important they really are to the reef keeping ecosystem. Paul has also been helping me out in terms of moderating this live stream, and I thank you, Paul, for that. But tonight the moderator is going to be interviewed. But before we do that, let me take care of a little business and thank the sponsors for the show, Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. Really appreciate these companies supporting the show, and I also appreciate all you folks tuning in. I see a lot of familiar folks out there joining the live stream, and as always, we encourage you to contribute to the chat and ask a lot of questions. Fire away at Paul so we can really kind of get behind the scenes here and do a little digging in terms of his reef keeping journey and talk about these reef keeping clubs. So, all right, Paul, I'm going to put you right on the spot here at the beginning here and ask you about this, how you got involved in the hobby. What has been your journey like? Almost 20 years.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's like most. I started off with freshwater tanks. I remember being a small boy or a child or whatever you want to call it. And I had a cousin that was always into keeping various, exotic fish and reptiles and snakes and birds. It was, it was cool to be exposed to all that stuff. And I remember going down to like the local department store where you could buy everything. And my mother and my father surprised me with it was either a 10 or a 20-gallon tank, and it like neon tetras and banana plants. And that's about, all that I can remember. And it was the best thing ever. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I had my own fish, and like everything was alive in there, and it was, truly mind blowing. And, from there it just progressed. I ended up getting in maybe a 55-gallon tank. At one point I had some type of terrarium set up, with some type of gecko lizards and a water feature and that type of stuff. And then, fast forward into I think I was about 26. I had a daughter. I had a newborn baby, and I had just gotten laid off. Like Keith and I had spoke about this before, early tonight. Like, I just got laid off. I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Like, I got all these bills, and I needed something to occupy my time. And I grabbed the local want advertiser, and I found a 44-gallon Perfecto Pentagon tank, took the ride, got that, set it up.
Were you looking for a tank, or you just like opened up the classifieds and you found all of a sudden the tank staring in your right at you?
Yeah, I was always interested in it. Like, there was a few local shops that's still around that I used to frequent, and I'd be like, oh my God, like, I can't afford this, like, it was tough being, I was the only one bringing in the money and paying the bills, and kids with diapers and, all that good stuff, and formula. And I remember going to this one store, and like, I'd go there on like a Friday night, maybe a Saturday night, but like every week, and just oogle and ogle at like every fish in there. And I'm like, yo, how much does this tank cost? Like, how much is this? And not knowing like the real cost of like running a successful reef aquarium. And, it just never happened. And I was like, oh, maybe there's one in the want ad. And that's how that came to fruition. And the rest is history, really,
Hook, line, and sinker there, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So did you have anybody, when you were starting out keeping reef tanks and what have you, like your first reef tank, did you have a mentor that you followed that you kind of tried to mimic in terms of the way you kept a reef tank?
Not really. I mean, to go back on that, like I went to my local Petco at that time, this is probably 2003, 2004. And, I was like, oh, I want to get this fish. I want to get this thing, whatever fish they were selling, clownfish, gobies, I don't know at that particular time. And the guy that was there, he was real, like kind of aggravated me because I was like, oh, I want to get this fish. And he's like, what's your parameters? And I knew nothing about nothing, like
You're like, what?
I literally bought that tank and I washed it with Ivory dish soap on my mother's front lawn and filled it up with water. And, I was like, all right, I'm going to get some fish. And they were like, thankfully the guy at Petco, like, he was great. And you know, he was involved in like the Boston Aquarium Society, and you know, he was like a big name type of you know, I don't remember his name at this point, but he was like, you know, someone. So I'd frequent that place and I'd pick ideas off him, and eventually he was like, "Hey, have you heard of this website called Boston Reefers Society?" And I was like, "What's that?" And you know, I went back on the dial-up days at AOL, and you know, waiting for that page to load seemed like days, and you know, it popped up, and I just remember seeing all this stuff, and like I was kind of at a point in my life, like I won't really go into specifics, like I needed some type of outlet, and I needed something to, you know, like keep my attention. You know, I'm wicked ADD if you can't tell by now, you know, like but I needed something to like focus on and like, you know, really drive, and you know, some type of a hobby, you know, like I did the car thing, I did the bike thing, I did the, you know, motorcycle thing, XYZ. They all cost a ton of money, you know. And I was like, I'm gonna try, you know, this reef tank. Originally it was gonna be like fish only with live rock. Like I remember ordering from Live Aquarium. It was like Walt Smith Fiji rock.
Yep.
Came like wet in newspapers, and I built a frame out of like I think 1/2 inch or 3/4 PVC, so I could make like a cool open structure, probably similar to like, you know, like the early stages of the NFS aquascapes now.
Yeah.
And you know, it worked out pretty well, and you know, I remember going to a Boston Reefers meeting, and you know, bumping into a few people, and you know, you get this online persona, and you're trying to match who's who. And I remember being gravitated to a certain number of guys that like really knew what they were doing. You know what I mean? Well, to me, anyways. I mean, yeah, they definitely knew what they're doing because they still have very successful tanks to this day. But I was just drawn to that. I was like, oh, you know, like, oh, how do you get this to grow? How do you know, like, I don't even remember what I had for lights, but I remember the first light fixture that I bought was it was like a Coralife compact fluorescent, and it was like, you know, $130 or something. And I was like, oh my God, it's so expensive for this light. Like, how do people just buy these things? And but all these other guys that I knew, these guys and girls that were successful at the hobby, they had these 400-watt halides, and I'm like, you know, back then where I had just gotten laid off, I'm thinking about like, oh, how am I going to pay an exuberant amount of electric bill, you know, for fish and coral? You know, it wasn't like, you know, in the cards at that point. Not really that it is now, but you know, you make do. And
well, yeah, it is not. It is not a cheap hobby. I mean, you can definitely do things in terms of do-it-yourself type of stuff, and you know, you could also be very prudent in terms of the kind of corals you put in your tank that are not going to break the bank. But you know, by the same token, there's so much stuff out there, and you've got the whole attraction in terms of social media and Instagram and what have you, and people just kind of like get crazed about certain pieces of coral and have to like, I get, you know, like in the back of my head, I was like, man, I gotta have this piece, and but then you're like, man, the price tag in that thing is like freaking ridiculous. So you gotta kind of keep you know, bringing the reins in, so to speak. But it's not easy. It's not easy, but it has changed a lot since you know, back in the day. I mean, I've been in the hobby nearly 30 years, but yeah, it's certainly changed. I mean, I remember you know, you mentioned you know, somebody at Petco had said, hey, have you ever heard of Boston Reefers Society? I remember when I was in a local fish store back in Connecticut, and this guy had these just kick-ass SPS dominant tanks, and so I always used to go to his store. So he was like kind of my you know, mentor, I guess you could say. Well, at least the person that I was trying to emulate in terms of his tank. But you know, I would always go there like on the weekends and what have you. And I ran into a couple of guys and you know, started chatting them up and stuff. And they said to me, "Have you ever heard of Reef Central?" I was like, "What's that?" You know, and so that's kind of like how I found Reef Central and the message board. So it's it's interesting in terms of the kind of things that you do to get information, and today there's just so much information out there.
yeah, it's absolutely mind blowing sometimes. Like you know, I definitely wasn't like in the forefront. You know, like how things took off. There's a lot of guys that came before me, guys and girls that, you know, definitely paved the way, and like I'm forever grateful for that. You know, like I've just recently, you know, got into the politics side of the club, and you know, like trying to do the social media thing, and It's a lot, you know, it's definitely a lot. There's a lot of different avenues. It's cool because there's a lot of information, but I know for me, like, you know, just talking in terms of like, I like the sense of belonging. You know, it's a cool, tight knit, niche community. You know, yeah, there's a lot of, you know, jerks no matter where you go. You know what I mean? But for the most part, like, everyone that I meet for the most part is like solid as come. You know, like
Yeah.
lifelong friends. You know, like I still talk to guys that I talked to, you know, back in 2003, 2004. You know, when I was getting involved in like, thank God for that. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny because one of my closest friends, like, I met in the club back then. You know, obviously, like, I had a break, you know, raising my kids or whatever, and you know, doing that type of stuff, and you know, I didn't have a tank, or I had a small tank, a nano tank, a 10-gallon, a 20-gallon. You know, then I was, screw it, I'm selling everything, I'm out of it. You know, try to get involved in a different hobby. Within like 6 months or a year, I'm setting up another tank. So that's literally how it's been for, like, you know, as my children grew up, and then, like, I think 2014, I had a cousin that, you know, the same cousin that, like, introduced me to, like, reptiles and everything as a small child. He's like, hey, I got this 14-gallon BioCube. You know, it's got a couple of clownfish, and you know, it's just sitting in the sunlight. You know, he's like, do you want it? And I was like, nah, I don't really want it. It's a 14-gallon tank. Like, I want a big tank. You know, like a couple 100-gallon tank. And my mother's like, well, the girls like fish. You know, da da da. You know, like, why don't you go get it? So I went and got it. You know, I ran that thing. You know, like, you know, typical softy tank, couple of zoanthids, couple of mushrooms, and that type of stuff. And then at some point, I think I, you know, came back into the club. You know, I always remained part of the club, but not like I am now, or not really even like you know, I just kind of checked in from time to time, like, hey, what's new, da da da, whatever. And because I wasn't like all in, you know. And then
Now you're all in.
it's probably like, yeah, now I'm in too deep, you know. Like, I joke with, you know, officers in the club, and you know, there's a couple other guys I look up to that very successful reef keepers, you know, like more money than God, so so to speak. And I joke with them, and like, we having a chat earlier, and I was like, you know, I was looking into, like, right now I have a 100-gallon tank and I have an 80-gallon tank, two 4-foot tanks, like an L, right? And I'm like, oh man, like, I wish I planned this. Like, planning is key for everything in life, you know what I mean? But like, I had the opportunity to get this tank, so I got it, you know, I got a good deal on it, you know, whatever. I got another one for free, kind of threw a bunch of money at it, and here's what I got, you know. But I was like, man, I wish I just saved some money, got a bigger tank that I, you know, a 6-8 footer that I originally wanted to start with. So now I'm at the point where it's just like you and I were talking earlier, there's just reef stuff everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's in my little living room. I got my water making 255-gallon barrels in my kitchen with the RODI unit. I got 2 shelves in you know, like cubby things, like jammed. The garage is filled with stuff. I'm like, mother of God. I'm like, and it's nice to look at, and it's cool and everything. But I'm like, oh, I really want a bigger tank, you know. And I'm at like year like or like month 13 on this system, you know. And like
so let's you shot a little video for us of this system. So you've morphed from that first tank, which you washed out with ivory dish soap, and Annie Jefferson is laughing at you for doing that. But you've graduated to this current system. I'm going to start running the
sure.
the video, and you recently had a tank crash, right? That you're coming back from. So this is kind of had to be rebooted.
Yeah.
So tell us about the system and what happened.
Terrible newbie mistake, so to speak. Even after this many years, like I've always kept some type of logbook of like any type of changes or like additives, XYZ, what I've done. And now this system was like finally up and running where everything was growing good, right? And I just got complacent. Like, my PHL probe was, you know, it was telling me one thing, my refractometer was telling me another, and like, I didn't want to take the time to float, you know, with this injury again. You know, I'm not blaming it on the injury, but like,
you have a back injury.
Things, yeah, I have a spinal injury right now, so, you know, yay me, but it could be worse. So like, I got complacent. I remember telling my buddy, like, oh, everything's starting to grow. Like I had, you know, probably 30, 40, maybe 50, like real high end SPS in there. You know, thankfully I'm in a club. I got good friends, you know, and I'm not paying top retail dollar, you know. So I mean, it still sucks. Like, yeah, I burned a bunch of money, but it's not as bad as if I bought everything retail, you know? And so my salinity was off a little, and I put a cup of salt in my sump, which I've done in the past, and gradually it'll raise up to, you know, specific gravity of where I want to keep it. And this time around, I didn't put it like in the fuge. Now I have a fuge, and I didn't really run Chaeto or anything like that. So I put the cup in where the skimmer was, in the output of the skimmer, you know, the water was bouncing off of the wall of the sump, and it went directly in this cup. So it spiked my specific gravity, probably from like 1.024 to like 1.035 in like a matter of an hour. And not really, again, you know, like not really paying attention. Like I was kind of out of it, you know, like mentally. I was just like, oh, I got nothing to do with this tank, like other than just watch stuff grow, you know, feed the fish, da da da. And yeah, it's definitely a learning lesson, you know, like you know,
it happens to the best of us, man. It happens to the best of us.
You know, you always hear the keep it simple, stupid, you know, and like literally, like that's the most sound advice in any avenue of life. Not even reef keeping. Like keep things simple. Like things will go the way they go. You know what I mean? And like with this system here, I was like, all right, you know, like I never had a controller. I was like, I'm getting a controller. I'm getting this for, you know, automatic testing. I'm going to do auto water changes, you know, all this stuff. I'm going to throw whatever money I can at it. And I know like throwing money at things doesn't equate to success, but it definitely helps out, I think, a little bit. But then again,
increases the odds. Increases the odds, I think.
Yeah. But I remember back in the day, like all the DIY stuff, you know, and like going to Home Depot and buy a reflector light and, you know, like a 6,500 Kelvin bulb, you know. Now I get these fancy fuge lights that are pink and they grow the same amount of Chaeto
as a Home Depot light bulb, right?
As the Home Depot light bulb did. But yeah, definitely trying to take things slow. Like you know, I have the opportunity. I think my water's okay, but I don't really know. You know what I mean? I've been running Brightwell Pure through there, trying to take out whatever case I have any, because I have some elevated levels of stuff. Like I do the ATI test kits. I've been running that the Reef Moonshiners program since April, and like literally everything was starting to flourish. And I was like, this is amazing. And then I pulled this bonehead error of like not keeping things simple, you know, and like try to overcomplicate things, and you know, XYZ, and my town's like source water is terrible. Like I think I have to upgrade, you know, add some more I don't know, cash in resin or something like that. There's like a lot of silica in the water. There's a lot of chloramines. You know, I mean, like I have a 7-stage system, and there's still stuff showing up.
Oh, really? 7-stage, and you're still getting impurities in the tank?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. I got to make some changes here. So I'm gonna run Pure for probably like another week or two. I'll you know, send out another test sample and see what happens. You know what I mean? Like I've already reached out to my Acro plug, you know, and I was like, oh, a couple of weeks, like I'm back in action, and I'm already planning out like a list and like how much money I'm going to spend and this and that. And then I'm like, well, I should probably take it a little slower this time around, you know. But,
well,
yeah, it's cool. It's definitely a learning experience.
So, folks, just want to remind you, if you have any questions for Paul or myself, then please put them in the chat. Don't forget to hit that like button so more people can find it. Usually, Paul, you're the guy that's nudging people to do that in terms of the liking the stream. But yeah, so where are you at now in terms of you know, this tank? I mean, you talked about you know, wanting to upgrade, but you're going to just kind of stick it out with this system for a while and try to get it stabilized, and then at that point think about maybe getting a bigger tank.
Yeah, definitely. It's weird because, you know, I got a quote for a tank.
You're gone already, man. When you start going for quotes, then you're already like, you're there. You're getting a bigger tank. That's a given.
I don't have 50 cents to my name, but I'm like, oh, how much money can I? You know, like obviously, like with the pandemic and you know, shortages and prices of everything going through the roof, you know, like gas is, you know, crazy down here everywhere. But I got a quote from Miracles for a 84 by 36 by 28 Peninsula tank.
That's a big tank, man.
It was like $7,000, which, you know, it's not terrible. And then, but that was like pre my injury, and then I got hurt, and then I was like, oh, what am I gonna do now? You know, that's out the window. And then, but you know, there's a guy in the club's got an Innovator Marine 200. and it's 6 by, I think it's 30 deep, 20 high. So I mean, it's like you know, I don't know. They don't ship till the end of June. You know, it's like $5,000, whatever. I looked it up today, and I'm like, I don't know if you know, do I want to come out of pocket with $5,000? It's kind of, you know, I could find many more things to spend money on, but I don't know. I sit in front of the tank. You know, it's 4 by 2 by 20. It's 100-gallon CAD lights, and then I have a 4 by 2 by 16 frag tank, and I'm like, you know, I get some bigger tangs in there, not huge, not overly huge, you know, 4 or 5 inches, and I watch them swim right to left, left to right, and I'm like, man, they could swim a little bit longer if I got a longer tank, and you know, just the aesthetics, everything, you know, would be nice and new and clean, da da da. But I don't know if I don't know. I'm definitely gonna get this tank stable and, you know, like to where I want it. Maybe I'll shift it into my kitchen, get rid of the frag tank, and just get a 6 or 8 footer and go from there.
Yeah, you know,
hopefully.
you can kind of position it as you're simplifying things, right? You know, you're going from 2 tanks to 1 bigger tank, and yeah. I mean, listen, it's all about what you know, in terms of the enjoyment, the satisfaction you get out of the hobby, and you know, down the line, it's always possible to upgrade. But that's kind of like the cool thing with the hobby, right, man? It's always like, you know, there's always a dream tank out there that you know, not a lot of us have the current dream tank sitting in the living room or the basement or what have you. So it's nice to be able to kind of think about that sort of thing, and you know, it also, it's a pain in the ass to move a tank. So if like you're not sure if you're going to be, you know, living in one spot for a, you know, extended period of time, then that kind of factors into this situation. It did for me. You know, when I used to live in Connecticut, I kind of knew that I was moving on, and not easy breaking down a 225-gallon tank, let alone you know, 100-gallon tank or 80-gallon tank. So yeah, you know, those are things you got to think about.
Yeah, this tank here, you know, a friend of mine, he you know, he had this tank for I think 3 or 4 years, and he upgraded to an 8-footer, and he's like, you want to come get it, and you know, with the back and being the guy that I think I am, and I'm still, you know, strong and XYZ, you know, all that macho wisdom stuff. And, you know, he's a big kid, bodybuilder, whatever. And he's like, yeah, come by. So, you know, it was me and my dad went down there, you know, my elderly father, we drove to his house, put the straps, like the furniture straps, like over your shoulders, and it goes onto like the appliance. And I got like, no lie, like 5 or 6 feet, and like I had tears in my eyes, like that's how bad my back hurt, and like I had to watch my 75-year-old father carry this tank with my buddy, and then it sat in the garage for probably 2 or 3 weeks. And another, you know, like I was saying, the guy, the friendships that I've made along the way in the hobby, guy that I met back in like 04, 05, that, you know, I consider one of my closest friends now, he came by after work and like manhandled the thing, put it on a furniture dolly, wheeled it around the house in the grass, and you know, him and my father put it on the thing, and I was like, all right, cool, I can start the plumbing now, you know. And so I don't know. I mean, if I get a, you know, a 500, 600, 700-gallon tank, you know, like I'll have to hire somebody, or you know, tell these guys in the club, get some suction cups and some beers.
You got the club, man. You got the club. Club members can help you out. Corey Page, thank you so much for that super chat. Really appreciate it. Louis Williams is asking, how long does it really take to get a tank stable? 1 year ? I think that kind of all depends. You know, it could be a matter of a couple of months, just depending on in terms of the system. I think each tank is unique, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree to that. Depends on where you start with too, you know, like dry rock. I know a lot of people have good experiences with dry rock. This system here, like thankfully I had some like older, you know, 10+ year older, like Fiji rock from a, you know, another system. And then I added some, you know, Mako shelf rock and, you know, that type of stuff. And the only rocks that had massive amounts of algae were like the mined rock, but you know, over time it cleared up and stuff.
Yeah,
so.
I can certainly relate to that experience, but I'm giving dry rock another go, so we'll see how that turns out. But I think it's going to turn out much better this time for me versus the last time, because I think the last time I was not terribly in the know. All right, Paul. So Boston Reefers Society. I mentioned that you're the president. You got a bunch of your peeps, I think, in the live stream chat, and so let's talk about that. You've been a member since, I think, what,
2004.
2004. What's the history of the club? What in a nutshell?
Yeah, so I spoke with somebody today. His name's Joe Scavo. He's like one of the originals, one of the founders, and he's got a great knowledge and all that good stuff. So I kind of pieced together something. So I'll just read a little, like a little script that I wrote up. So it started with a couple of guys. So one of the original founders in the George Washington of Boston Reefers Society, Mo Kirby, in 2001 ran a mailing list on reefs.org that would allow hobbyists to meet up, swap corals, and share knowledge at various locations, including the Rainforest Cafe in Burlington, Mass., until they were asked to leave due to spilled water and the amounts of people that would gather by their booths. And then on May 4th, 2001, Greg Hill, most of which y'all know, he's been on your show a couple of times, he offered up his home for a get-together, and 10 people that signed up. They were treated to, delicious meal provided by Greg's wife, and they took home a coral frag, all while learning the art and science of propagation.
That's a nice dinner, man. Take home a coral.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, at that time, Mo met Jake Mackey, Jim Wynn, and Joe Scavo for the first time. So things were looking good, up for the crew. And more hobbyists started coming out. Mo had a contact at the New England Aquarium, and they offered up a meeting space. And they were asked, estimated, how many people do you think are going to show up? So they told them 20, because it was still, we're very tight-knit grassroots. And to everyone's surprise, more than 70 people showed up at that meeting, and at that time, they knew something was brewing. They changed the name from Boston Reef Club to Boston Reefers Society Incorporated. They filed the paperwork for various licensing and nonprofit status. It's all about, mainly what this club is all about is about educating the public about, marine life and, coral restoration, education, that type of stuff. And that's where, we're trying to push the club back to its original roots, because that's where the most information was shared. You know what I mean? Like anything, that the advent of social media and that type of stuff, I have conversations with guys, whether they are interested in becoming sponsors or, just information. And there's just so much information out there, and there's so much information that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's cool to be part of a club, like a local club, and finding that mentor and jump in his back pocket, go along, ride the coattails. If somebody told me, if I, do a cartwheel down the street 10 times, I'm going to grow epic SPS, I'm damn well going to do 10 cartwheels down the street, but, so yeah, going back to that, after, the amount of people showed up, they filed this paperwork. Joe Scavo and this other gentleman, Jim Foster, contracted a web host and published the first web page for the group. It was certainly a hit and allowed a central clearinghouse of information to be shared among anyone that became a member or visited the website. The summer of 2002, BRS held its first elections. Mo became the president. Joe Scavo became the vice president. Jim Wynn, the treasurer. Jim Foster, VP of Public Relations. And Steve Shannon, secretary. So in 2003, Joe and Mo went to MACNA 15. I believe it was in Indiana. Don't quote me on that one. I skimmed through 100 things leading up to this. And to set up a booth and let people know that Boston Reefers would be hosting MACNA 16 in Boston in 2004. That was my actual first reefing experience, being exposed to the industry side of things, and definitely an unforgettable one, as I'm still here 18 years later. So there's a lot of history.
I was going to say,
there's a lot of history, and that's the super condensed version. But on our website, it's www.bostonreefers.org. There's we had a newsletter. I don't want to say we, because I wasn't, I was just a member. I wasn't anybody, not that I'm anybody now. I'm just another bozo on the bus. And, but there's a lot of information out there, the intricacies of how to run a club, and, guys were involved with, one guy was in charge, was a consultant for Massner, and, there was somebody else was running Massner. And so Massner's start way back in the beginning, all tied in with guys from Boston Reefers. There's a lot of history to it. There's a lot of cool stories and, get-togethers. And it was cool. This past weekend, we went on a frag farmers market in Connecticut. And, I went with Joe Scavo. He came and picked me up. We loaded up the truck. We had a bunch of merch and, different stuff. And I remember, so, again, ADD, like, I remember being at that Machner in '04 and, like, reading books from, like, Mike Paletta and Sanjay or, like, Julian Sprung and seeing these different guys. And I remember seeing, like, David Saxby, like, walking by me with, like, Mark Levinson and be like, oh, like, starstruck, like, oh my God, like, that guy's famous. You know what I mean? He's just another guy, just interested in the same things. And that was kind of like the same feeling that I got with Joe. Like, Joe's been around for a long time. And when everything was in its infancy and, like, creating this industry, like, Joe was there and these other guys, Mo and Jim and whatnot, they were all there. And Joe's like, do you know who this guy? I met the guy from ESV. I met the guy from Manhattan Reefs. I met, some other guys.
It's a great networking. Like, wow,
it's
a great networking opportunity. Those events,
unbelievable. And there's so many people from so many diverse, like, backgrounds. Like, you could, character assassinate and look at this person and be like, oh, what do they know? And, like, that person might teach you a lot of things about not even reef keeping, just life in general, so it's a good time. It's a good space to be involved in, I think, anyway.
So now, as president, what's your role and responsibility there as president? You got a lot of balls up in the air there, Paul.
Yeah, I like to think I cracked the whip, but I'm easy go and happy go lucky. I like to joke and smoke, so to say. And I don't know. It's definitely a lot of work. It's a thankless job. Like, I'm sure, you put this show on, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that people don't see. I'm grateful to have the opportunity. Like, I truly am. Like, it gives me a bit of a purpose in this time of my life with this injury and whatnot. And, I enjoy it. Like, probably 40, 50 times a day. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. Like, I'm done with the politics side. And, because it's like an actual organization as well, instead of just a club. Like, yeah, it's a club through and through, but it's an actual, like, registered business about promoting education, and that type of stuff. So I don't know if you can tell, the way I talk. Like, I grew up working construction, a lot of words come out that probably shouldn't come out, that afterwards I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. But
your honesty is refreshing, dude. So
yeah, I try to keep, mind my P's and Q's, but like, sometimes I'll just get so frustrated over certain situations. And I'm sure that's the same in any avenue, whether it's a reef club or a motorcycle club or whatnot.
Listen,
like, it's frustrating at times.
Like you said, it's a nonprofit organization. You've got a job that, I don't know if you're getting compensation, or you're doing it for free or what have you, but, you're probably not putting in the amount of time in terms of, getting the returns on that investment of time. But I think that it's, I admire, guys like you, that because you could tell you really love the hobby. Just, in our brief conversation right here, you could tell you have a passion for the hobby, and obviously you're able to leverage that passion as a president of the club, and it can't be an easy job. And I don't envy you in that regard. We have a private road association that I live on in Vermont. It's a dirt road. We're not on one of the town roads, so we basically have to maintain the roads ourselves in terms of plowing and grading the road and all that stuff. Well, I'm the president of the association. It's a non-paying job, and it's a thankless job, because I'm basically the bill collector. So
sure. Same here.
Yeah.
I'm like, I like I was saying, I'm happy-go-lucky for the most part. Like, I like to joke and smoke, and it's hard for me to, like, delegate, like, thank God, like, I have a great crew, you know what I mean? Like, we have a board of directors. There's 9 of us. There's president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, 4 board of directors, and vice president of public relations. Like, thankfully, everybody does their part. Like, it's finally gotten to a point, like, within this last year, that it really clicks. Like, there's a good number of us that have been, have served in office, so to speak, in the last, like, couple of years. And, like, it's really, like, that ball's finally got that momentum to where, like, everything just meshes, and it's not so much like I have to be like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? Like, we all just kind of see what needs to be done and do it. You know what I mean? Like, thank God for that, you know, because I'm definitely not the one that's like, oh, hey, look at me, I'm the president, like I need you to do this, and if you don't like it, you know, tough crap and friggin', you know, fly a kite, you know, type of deal. But you know, like, everyone's good, you know, I get calls, you know, at least weekly, most, you know, every couple of days. Hey, just checking in. Do you have anything that I can help lighten the load? And like, thank God for that.
That's cool. Know? So Andy Jefferson is saying the club meetings are fun. What are the club meetings been like? I mean, obviously COVID has probably changed a lot of things, but perhaps you guys are gonna eventually get back to the way things were.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to figure out, you know, logistically and, you know, stuff like that. Now, you know, with the whole COVID thing, like, obviously things are opening back up. We threw like an impromptu, like, last minute frag show last September, and it was good turnout. You know, there was a you know, I don't know what there was for attendance, but it was a good turnout. You know, it was like last minute type of deal, but we wanted to kind of give back. But so, like, meeting wise, at least how it was like years ago, like when I was just Joe Schmo showing up with 2 little kids and hopefully, you know, maybe getting a frag or something. You know, they you know, the club would fly in, you know, a speaker. Like, I've seen Mark Levinson talk. I've seen Joey Aiello talk from Long Island Aquarium. I've seen, I think, I don't know. I can't tell you offhand.
You guys had some named speakers.
Number of people. Yeah, they'll fly them in, you know, put them up in a hotel, you know, like, you know, pay them to come in and give some type of presentation. And it's always been like, after that, like, maybe go to like a seafood restaurant or something, there'd be 50, 75 members hanging out, you know, like having dinner together, you know, like breaking bread. And, you know, it's more of a family than a club.
That's awesome.
And like,
man.
I can, you know, it's awesome. Great. It's absolutely great. You do have your occasional, you know, pains in there, you know, behind.
There's always a few, right?
You know, myself included, you know, like I said, I'm just another bozo on the bus. I'm no better. I'm no worse. You know, maybe I am, who knows, you know, but, yeah, we're trying to get back, you know, we're trying to figure out, you know, with Corey, Paul, you're still a Joe Schmo. Absolutely. Corey's great, man. He's a great guy. All these guys and girls, you know, it's,
well,
you know, relationships I never thought I'd form.
Yeah. No, I live in Vermont and I'm part of the club. And one of these days I gotta make it to an in-person meeting when you guys start getting that show going again.
Yeah, we're trying to put together, you know, logistically, we're trying to put together, you know, like a family day, like a barbecue outdoor thing or whatever. Maybe have, you know, frag swapping. You know, members are always allowed to trade and sell frags, like, at meetings. Sometimes we'll bring in vendors, and, you know, they can set up a frag tank or whatnot. And yeah, it'll be a good time. We get a lot of things in the pipe, you know, like, it should be a great year. Next year should be even better. You know what I mean? Like, projecting forward, you know, I mean, anything could happen, you know, in that time frame. Like, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, or, you know, the whole world's wipes out. Who knows, you know? But yeah, there's a lot of good things in store. You know, like, we, you know, during the COVID time, you know, we bought a Zoom license, and you know, thankfully we had you on the show and a couple other people on the show in the industry, and, you know, that's cool. You know, we might still continue to do that for like the next, you know, maybe March, but we're hoping to shoot for like an actual in-person in April, some type of get together. Again, logistically speaking, if everything works out.
Now, are the majority of your members in the Boston city area, or is it kind of spread out to beyond Boston?
Yeah, it's definitely spread out beyond Boston. When I first got involved, I mean, 7 miles south of Boston. You know, I grew up in Quincy, Mass, and there was a good, you know, maybe 10 guys in that area. And then there was like pockets, you know, like you know, suburbs of Boston, 10 guys here, 5 guys there, 3 girls there, whatever. But you know, as like running the website and like being able to see everyone's information, and, you know, people joining, and, you know, whatever, having to be vetted and that type of stuff, because, you know, we definitely don't put up with any nonsense. That's one thing I won't put up. Name calling, you know, like calling people and all, you know, just unnecessary BS.
Yeah.
You know, that, I mean, why? Like, yeah, it's funny if you're 15 in your mother's basement, but when you're 35 and you're arguing with someone on a fish farm, like, come on, what's really going on? You know, and but there's a lot of people in New Hampshire. There's a good number in Southern Maine. probably from like Worcester, Mass, middle of the state, out towards, Boston, the city, down to the Cape, Rhode Island, Connecticut. We got some, past members that were from here that live in California and stuff and still chime in on the boards. And so,
Cool.
I mean, I don't want to say it's nationwide, but it's definitely like the New England region, It's
So have you seen membership, kind of grown? Has it fallen off a little bit? Has it kind of just been stable? What have you guys seen over the past few years?
Yep. So in 2018, again, I got hurt, got this injury. I needed something to do. And I reached out to the current president at that particular time. And I was like, hey, listen, like, if you need somebody to, here's my background. Like, I have a degree in computer networking, which means absolutely nothing because it's been like 10 years since I've done any type of IT work. And I'm like, oh, I could probably help out on the website, this and that. And, they voted me in, which is good. Like I'm agreeing to that. And then just from the people and the relationships that I've made over the years, I was like, all right, hey, let's do this. Hey, let's do that. Just throwing out suggestions and, nothing against him or that particular crew. And he was like, well, I'm going to nominate you for president. And I didn't really want the role because I know it's an extra step and it's a lot more work involved. And, like I said, it's thankless at times. And, it's all, we're all volunteers, like that's another thing, like people don't understand, like we all volunteer our time to help make this club what it is and to see it succeed, and sometimes, I mean, I'm doing 25, 30 hours worth of work on the back end of a server and like trying to come up with different things and implement them. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, so it's like, when things don't go the way they should go in my mind, I'm like, that's it. I'm done. F this, F that, da, 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 whatever. Like I'm selling everything. Like I'm just gonna, not even be in the hobby anymore. Like I don't even want an aquarium, and
you
then,
run
half an
the
hour later,
gambit
right?
of emotions there. You got all the highs and all the lows.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
what's the sales pitch? Let's say if somebody, you kind of run into somebody at a show or something, or an industry event, or you just kind of somebody reaches out to you about the club, and what's kind of like the pitch to somebody that's kind of on the fence about joining a club? What are the benefits to joining a reef club for those that are not familiar with those benefits?
Yeah. So for me personally, the benefits is, that close-knit like family relationship, a sense of belonging, somewhere that you have an outlet to go to, once a month, whether it's, again, the Zoom meeting thing's tough, but in-person events, like I always look forward to like, oh, great. There's like people like myself, like-minded people. And again, like diverse people. You could have a lawyer, a doctor, an astronaut, a guy that sweeps the street, whatever. Like we're all there for a common reason, and like I enjoy that aspect. There's great knowledge, we're, I don't want to speak as we, but the club's been around. This is our 20th year. There's some like heavy hitters in the industry. Like it's cool with the Facebook groups. Like we have a Facebook group, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, like all that stuff. Like you got to expand your horizons, but there's so much information. Like I've had this conversation with people and they're like, oh, it's just easier for me to go on a Facebook group. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But you're going to have a real conversation in a forum. You're going to meet real people in a forum. There's unlimited resources. Like, we used, again, back in the day, we had like a massive library of books and videos and, scientific articles and like everything that was available for you. Like you could check out like a library card, keep it for a month and bring it back and XYZ. At some point, that stopped, I mean, it's a lot. You'd see the guy come in with a pickup truck full of books, and movies and that type of stuff. But we have a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of good knowledge, the camaraderie, the sense of belonging. Just during COVID, we just purchased 3 Apogee MQ510, power meters. We offer lending of power meters. We have fish traps. What else do we have? A slew of equipment that's readily available. Like I know BRS did it a while ago where you could, like pay with your credit card. They'd put a hold, I forget what it was, $500 or something. The cost.
You break it, then you pay.
And you could, you break it and you pay. You know what I mean? Like somebody somebody breaks one of these power meters, I'm probably going to break something over their head when I see them in person. Not really, but that's just like how my mind
Could be a bit of a bummer.
I'm like, Yeah, so I mean, we get a bunch of equipment, suction cup things,
That's
like
huge in terms of suction
everybody's.
cups for tank moves because
Yeah,
me being out here in Vermont, I am not close to any of you folks in the greater Boston area, but there's not too many reef keepers out here, and I've had several tanks moved here, and I've had to hire movers to do that. So
yeah,
yeah, that's a big benefit I think in terms of just a tank
yeah.
move.
We definitely have a lot of equipment. Just the general knowledge. There's so many guys and girls that have like been from the start, like even previous to like getting incorporating the club. There's so much knowledge around, and 99% of them will take 2 or 3 hours out of their day. Like, hey, why don't you come by, check out my tank? Let me explain this. Obviously this is all pre-COVID, but I don't know. I mean,
Listen, reef keepers like to, I think share the knowledge and show off their systems and be show offs. I mean,
sure,
I'm a show off, but you mentioned camaraderie in terms of a club, being part of a club.
yeah,
When I used to when I was in Connecticut, I had a 225-gallon tank, and some guys from the what was the name of the club? I can't remember the name of the club. I'm not even sure the club is still around, but I think the club was based in Queens, New York, and so they rented a party bus and they took a road
yeah,
trip from Queens to Connecticut, which was maybe like I don't know, an hour or something like that, an hour and 15-minute drive. And they came
sure,
in this party bus and they pulled up my driveway and came into the house and there was probably like 20 guys that showed up and we just kind of talked reef for a couple of hours and I showed them around and there was some frags going back and forth and it was just a lot of fun, man. It's just like it's great
yeah.
experience to be part of a club and to go on these like little road trips and do tank tours. I mean, have you guys done a lot of probably not a lot of tank tours lately, but those are very educational, right?
Yeah, nothing lately. Like originally when I got involved or I found out about the club, like I said, I had a significant other and 2 kids in diapers, so there wasn't a lot of what I was doing. Like I remember dragging them to like monthly meetings, and my kids are playing with someone else's kids, like just while I'm trying to like learn and get an education and that type of stuff. I know in years past, like they'd rent a shuttle bus and they'd take a ride, hit all the stores in Rhode Island, all this, go down like 84 or 95 into 84 or whatever, and then make it a day, and they'd hit all the stores in Connecticut and Rhode Island, maybe even go into Long Island. We used to do a fish collecting trip. I think that was part of LIRA, Long Island Reef Association, and like it was their thing with like Joe Iol. I think that's how you pronounce his name, and it's like a tongue twister. Sally sells seashells. I can't even say it, but there was always something going on with like area organizations and clubs and aquariums, whether it was fish collecting or a road trip to a particular store, and maybe it was 5 stores that day, and it would end with a barbecue at the last place or something like that. There's always been like members, like you were saying, there was always members that would be like, hey, I'm going to host, hamburgers and hot dogs, and bring your own booze or whatever, beers, whatever you're into, like you bring that type of stuff. Like
Yeah.
I'll provide the food. Like we can have an impromptu, informal get together. Like I've spent many nights or weekends at like various people's houses and just like awestruck, like how'd you grow this
Yeah.
this colony this big, and like someday I'm gonna get there, and yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of
And
fun,
it also comes in handy if you have like a tank emergency to have people that can kind of just swing
Yeah,
by and help you out in a time of need.
yeah,
That again is something that I don't really have here, being sort of in the boondocks in Vermont. But yeah, if you get into a situation where you need a little tank leak, or you got a pump that failed and you need another pump and you just can't overnight one the following day, you got a fellow reef keeper that could help you out, man. That's gold.
yeah. That's definitely a plus benefit as well. I mean, I know personally speaking, I've come into countless issues, and there's always 1 or 2 people that are willing to go out of their way to help you out. Whether they have to take something off another system that's maybe not fully at capacity. Whether it's a pump or skimmer, some type of additive, XYZ. Yeah, yeah, I mean, like, I'm thankful, forever thankful. You know, like I'm part of this club, and I've got some like real lifelong friendships out of the deal. You know, and it's cool because I don't know, like the whole like character assassination thing. You know, I don't know. I probably shouldn't talk about it, but like me growing up as a kid in the city, like, you know, guys are guys. Guys don't have feelings. Guys don't have emotions. You know, like if you're into computers, you're a dork. You're a nerd. Like all this stuff. Like I remember going to like one of my first meetings, and you know, and again, like I'm just another bozo on the bus. You know, but at that time, like the way my mentality was, like growing up in like that environment in the city. Like I remember, like I'd never talked. I used to say to myself, "God, never talk to these people outside of a reef club." And like these people are like my best friends. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just like them. You know, like, and it just comes down to, you know, a crappy way of thinking, more or less. You know, but
I mean, listen, I think the relationship building part of being part of a club is huge. I really do. I think that,
Yeah.
you know, obviously with COVID and the fact that we haven't been able to kind of get together as hobbyists and have those situations where you go to a conference and do some networking like we're talking about before. But I do think that the human component is a big part of reef keeping. Just to kind of like you know, have those conversations with other like-minded individuals. I mean, I learn something new. It seems like every day, you know, and I've been doing this for a long time. But you know, hey, listen, I think also a key to success is not being locked into, you know, the way you're used to doing things. Right. I mean, if you've got
Right.
a tank that's on cruise control, if things are going well, you've got a great methodology. All right, continue on as you will, right? But if you know, if things are like maybe not exactly where you want them to be, and you know, probably a lot of us are always thinking that, like, geez, the tank could always be a little bit better. But you know, be open to other different points of view, and I think with a reef club and having those different perspectives is so valuable in my eyes. You know, so but what we got a lot going on in the chat there, right?
These guys are funny. Joe Scavo, from day one that I met this kid, been busting my balls that, you know, because he's from the next town over, like over the bridge. There was General Dynamic
Are you guys
Shipyard.
having a little
Go
turf
over the
wars going
bridge.
on here? Is that what's going on?
He's always like, Quincy's trash, you know, literally for the last 20 years, Quincy's trash. And I'm like, oh, Weymouth's, you know, we used to go to Weymouth and beat up the kids over the bridge and, you know, that thing. So he's commented about, is Quincy even a city? And, you know, you know, he's a good dude. There's a lot of good people in my corner, thank God.
What about the role of local fish stores with reef clubs? How do you guys work with them, support them?
Yep. I mean, we offer sponsorship to the local clubs. It benefits everybody, I believe. You know what I mean? Like, I know, you know, obviously I'm not in advertisement, but I do have people I know in advertisement and advertisement rates and XYZ and all that good stuff behind the scenes that nobody really knows about. But I mean, we all, hey, if you want to sponsor our club, like I won't get into specifics, you know, like financials or whatever, but if you want to sponsor our club, like we'll give you your own forum where you can, you know, update your stock list. You're getting exposure from normally people that wouldn't see it. You know, if like you open up a store and you don't do any advertisement, the only people that are going to know about the store is that those amount of people that you tell or the people that drive by. You know, so we're I'd like to say like a unique club or niche club, so to speak. There's that many more eyes, you know, get exposed. So, oh, hey, there's a new sponsor, and it's not that they're sponsoring the club. I mean, well, yeah, they are sponsoring the club, you know, but I don't know. It works out good. I don't think since I've been like behind the scenes, I haven't had anyone that's, you know, had a problem. Like a lot of people, you know, a lot of them are hobbyists turned into businesses, but they're still hobbyists at heart. You know what I mean? So they still want to have the interaction and the conversation, and they still want to, you know, maybe they have to do a 300-gallon water change on this trough or whatever, but they'll sit there and talk to you after hours about, hey, this is how I do things or XYZ, and it seems good. Like I talk to, you know, maybe I don't know, between like 5 and 10 on average, you know, whether it's different social medias via email, whatever, like, hey, we're interested in helping the club, and I mean, it's great in the sense because it allows the club to, and again, this is pre-COVID and hopefully after COVID, it allows the club to maintain relationships with industry people, whether they're in science, some type of academia, whether they're Joe Schmo that owns Joe Schmo's coral shop down the street or whatever, to like bring in and educate. Like our meetings are open to everyone. It's not, you have to be a member to come in. You know what I mean? Like we're all about educating the public about, marine and coral life and coral restoration and that type of stuff. So I don't know if I probably skated around that subject, but it is what it is.
So folks, I'm going to remind you again, if you want to ask Paul a question, and I think you've got a bunch of your folks on the chat, inside the chat here. So if
bunch of my cronies.
Bunch of your cronies within the chat there. So fire away with any questions. Another advantage with I guess being a club member is that you can get some discounts, right, from vendors, whether it's an online vendor or local fish stores, right? Aren't there opportunities for discounts? Or am I speaking out of turn?
No. Currently, there isn't really any type of thing like that. At one particular time, there was obviously different tiers of sponsorship, and it's optional. It's up to whoever the company is. It's up to the company. A lot of, like, when I was younger and coming up in this, and XYZ fish store would offer 10% on livestock. ABC fish store or coral shop would offer 15%. It was always up to that particular vendor or that sponsor. Like, it's not imposed. It's not saying like, hey, Keith, if you want to be a sponsor of the club, you have to offer 15% off. You know what I mean? Because I'd never personally, I'm not going to tell someone how to run their business. You know what I mean? And it's always, for a good cause. Like, yeah, it helps the club out. You know what I mean? Financially, like a lot of stuff. This is again skating off that topic. ADD over here. Like I deal with a lot of people from like various Facebook groups about like, oh, why should I do this and why does it cost? It's $20 a year. It's less than 5 cents a day. I mean, I spend
people are giving you grief about $20. Spending $20 a year.
Yeah, it's crazy for the amount of information and the knowledge and the equipment.
Let me say, folks, for $20 a year, that is money very well spent. Very well spent.
Yeah, I agree. And but a lot of people don't, because of the social media aspect of the Facebook groups and that type of stuff. Like, people don't understand, like, web hosting costs money. Server fees cost money. Licensing for software costs money. Every change that you make to the back end costs money. You know what I mean? Like flying a speaker in from, say, California or something. I mean, yeah, flights are cheap, but you still gotta provide a meal.
Hotel.
You gotta provide a hotel. You gotta provide an honorarium. You know what I mean? Like, none of that stuff is free. It's not like, hey, can I borrow, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
I guess you could save some money if you have them bunk with one of you guys, right? I mean, that's always a, and then they get the benefits of a little home cooking.
Yeah. Actually, Mark Levinson, he used to be a big proponent of it. Like, he was okay with, staying at someone's house, like going to whoever was hosting or someone local that was in the scene, going and checking out their tanks and that type of stuff. So that's always cool, and that's always another aspect. But it just blows my mind sometimes about, just how people will, and again, this isn't everyone. People will complain about the most minute thing, but they'll spend $1,000 on a half-inch piece of SPS that immediately smokes as soon as it hits their tank. Like it's nothing, you know what I mean?
Joe Scavo says, shout out to our moderators, ! I was going to ask you that question. Is that part of your duties? Are you one of the moderators on the forums? And if so, how do you handle that juggling act? That's got to be kind of a tough job, right?
When I kind of, again, like, I have a team of great people. I don't want to try to be like, look at me, because I'm not that person. Normally there's a handful of moderators. Usually it's a past, like, president or vice president or something will step down. They don't want that aspect of, the responsibility, and they'll just roll out to, to become a moderator. And just, keep it clean. We're a family friendly forum. And it's tough for me sometimes because, again, like, I grew up in the city. I worked construction for 20 years. I like to say swears. Like, my poor father, he's 77 tomorrow, and he's like, will you stop with that swearing? And I'm like, Dad, it's your princess daughter that taught me these swears. You know what I mean? But, like, yeah, there'll be an issue, like some bickering, someone's trying to beat someone's a point across. And for the most part, like, it's anything goes. But when it starts getting into, like sexism, racism, obviously, that type of stuff, like stuff that shouldn't be happening, period, anyways, in a joking manner or not. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the main thing I noticed with moderation is, like, everyone that's a paid member has access, to a vote, for elections. There's an election every December, for the following year. Everyone has, access to borrow equipment. Everyone can sell coral equipment, whatever, that type of stuff as hobbyists.
Sell on the forums.
So, yeah, sell on the forums. Have a place to sell. Basically a want advertiser for like-minded people. And where was I going with that? There'll always be that one person, and it sucks because as the moderator, not only as the moderator, as like one of the people behind the scenes, I'm sure like the setup that you're doing, like you can see people's IP addresses. You can.
I don't look at that information, Paul.
All right. Neither do I. Duplicate account checks and stuff like that. And, like, rules were created and rules were there and they're put in place for a reason. Without rules, there's chaos. I mean, it's the same thing in any other aspect of life. So why would it be different, like, in a club that, yes, it's a club, but it's most certainly an organization, like an educational organization, So there'll always be, like, someone that's trying to skate through and they'll sell somebody broken equipment. And we've always had the stance as the club itself, like, it's buy at your own risk. You know what I mean? Like, you're not buying from ReefBum and expecting some type of manufacturer warranty. You're buying from Joe Schmo that's maybe used that pump for 3 years and now it's been sitting in his garage for 8. You know what I mean? Like, it's buy on your own risk. Like, yeah, we still deal with that. And, like, my end, like, I want to be able to help everybody, in some term of way. And there will be an issue of, like, someone's a paid member and, I just had this encounter recently. Somebody sold somebody some pumps. And again, like, that's on you guys. You know what I mean? But then that same person sold some other pumps to somebody else. And, it comes into, like, they're sponsors of the club and da-da-da. And, like, like, now I have to intervene and be like, dude, like, what's up? And then I look through, like, their account check history or IP addresses, and they have, like, 7 accounts. One paid, a bunch of different ones, fake names to, like, boost their sales. And I'm like, you got to go. Like, that's it. Like, it says right in the terms and rules and, like, the agreements that you agree, that you agree. I know nobody reads the fine print, like, how many terms of service of apps on, I probably have 300 apps on my phone. I haven't read one term of service. I just click OK.
Well, there's certain behaviors that you kind of know you shouldn't be doing stuff like that anyway.
And then people get upset over it. And then, I'm the a-hole, but I'm okay with that. Like, been an a-hole my whole life, I guess, Well,
you don't seem like an a-hole to me there, Paul, but I guess you gotta be the heavy, I guess, sometimes being the prez. So, Insane Reefer, thank you so much for that super chat. Awesome conversation, by the way. Thanks, gentlemen. And you had a question too before. This is actually a reef keeping question, and you can chime in on this one too, Paul. The question is: I have acros that are checking out, but many that look awesome. My salinity came down from 1.025 to 1.024. Do you think that can be the issue? I do not think that could be the issue. That's a very small drop in salinity. So I would certainly look at other things that are going on there in that tank in terms of, alkalinity to me is always a big thing. If you got a big alkalinity swing, then that could be the culprit. Check for pests too. If you got certain acros that are looking great and others that are not looking great, then you might have an acro-eating flatworm, red bug issue, another kind of bug. Could be pissing off some of those acros. It could be a number of different things. But
Yeah, just make sure you don't do like I do and put a cup of salt in your sump and like elevate your specific gravity through the roof. Because it's very disheartening when that happens.
I've done a bunch of boneheaded things myself to wreak havoc on my tanks in the past. So you know what? Everybody, we're human, right? We're human. So it's this crap kind of like happens. Just looking at some of the other chat. So what else, man? What else do we want to talk about here? You know, you mentioned research and conservation. Anything specific going on that front, or you just really try to promote those efforts in general?
Yeah, right now, well, as of right now, like we're trying to research avenues of like, where we could possibly donate, maybe get some type of, speaker out of the equation. My vice president currently, he's a, I don't know what it, title, a chemist or whatever, but he has like a background in like genealogy and like yeast production or something like that from like BU, and he had a colleague, a classmate that I wish I knew off the top of my head. She runs a coral restoration foundation out of the Bahamas, cool. And he's been catching up with her, and we're trying to get some type of conservation effort going. And I mean, that's really what it's all about. It's in my eyes, it's more about rebuilding what we have than you can't always get the same pieces that maybe you can get from a shipment. You know what I mean? Like, but my understanding, like I've always been into, like taking a piece and growing it out. I mean, like look at the Bally Green Slimer. How many generations have been grown in like aquaculture over the last 25 years? It probably still grows in the ocean, but there's probably 95% of it's like been grown in someone's system. It's all about that for me, is like trying to save the earth, try to save the reefs. I mean, people don't really, I don't know if people don't realize. I know like people I talk to, like my family members, they don't really understand like what we're about and like what we're trying to do as a collective, like as like, a whole group of like-minded individuals. Like the reefs protect so much. The mangrove forests protect so much. Like without the reefs, without the mangroves, like there's no shoreline, and all those tropic areas, like that's all gone. That's now part of the ocean. And there's so much research out there. I don't know. It's tough for me to, I don't know, like pinpoint anything. Like obviously I can talk, what I mean? I can usually talk a cat off a tuna boat, like I'm very passionate about this, like as yourself and like everyone that I know that's in it, like very passionate about the hobby, very passionate about where as hobbyists, like it's not just about having that cool, like rainbow splice or that rare piece, you know what I mean? Like, I have like, I just decimated a ton of like super high-end designer stuff.
You didn't have a rainbow splice in that tank, did you?
I did not have a rainbow splice, but I had a few $700-800 half-inch frags in there.
Ouch.
That was definitely a lesson. But coral's coral, you know what I mean? Like I like SPS. I think SPS dominated tanks look amazing, but I also like torches. I like blastos. I like soft corals. I had a soft coral tank in my kitchen for like 5 years, and they were all brown, but it was amazing. It was such a cool ecosystem, And I remember back in 2005, like just to bounce back, like I had a good friend of mine, not in the hobby, and I had an Oceanic 70-gallon, I think it was like cherry oak stand or whatever, cherry finish or something like that. And I had it on the third floor. I lived in an apartment on the third floor, and like
it didn't leak, like, did it?
No, it didn't leak, thank God. I had like the water chain system, like PVC pipe from the basement where I had my RODI with a half inch or 3/4 pipe run up the side of the house, yada yada. But like I said, I'm ADD. I already forgot with it. Oh, so yeah. So my buddy came by, and of all the cool stuff, back then it was like Wham and watermelons, cat eye zoes, alien eyes, like stuff like that was just starting to become named. It might be like a Tyree something or other, but everything else was all scientific names,
Yep.
And my buddy saw this 10-cent hermit crab walking across the sands, and he was like, "That's it, dude. I'm in. Like I'm going all in." And this kid spent thousands and thousands and
Just because of that hermit crab got him like.
just because of that hermit crab, and he had this amazing tank. But like, he lived in a town that had, you know, the municipality. They had their own electric supply, so they very rarely lost power. And he also had the water was real clean. So I had the RO system at my house, and I was like, dude, just come whenever you want. You know, there's always 55 gallons of fresh water. Come by. And he was like, oh, that's too much work. He'd go to a sink, get the town water, and like everything. I've never seen a tank flourish so well with such dirty water. But no matter what he put in that tank, like everything just grew, you know. And then
Something magical in the water.
yeah, it was something magical over there in Rain of Mass. If anyone's in Rain of Mass, you know what I'm talking about, you know. But
So, Paul, where do you hope envision the club, you know, to be in the next few years? What anything that you guys are planning on doing that might be a little different in terms of the way you're operating now? Do you have any kind of a future wish list?
I'd like to see more unity on it. Obviously, you know, less bickering. You know, like, again, not to single anyone out or anything like that.
Get rid of the Facebook group page.
Yeah, it's tough with the Facebook group page. It's tough with a lot of like the I don't want to
And
categorize.
is most of the bickering because people's getting burned by other people in terms of selling? Is that pretty much like the gist of it, or is it just people are getting very opinionated about topics?
Yeah, it's just a lot of opinionated stuff. I don't want to classify and be like, oh, millennials, Gen Z, you know, that type of stuff. Like, I'm 40, I'll be 46 in 2 months. Like, I grew up in a different time as, like, you know, I have a 20-year-old that's respectful to a point, you know what I mean? But sometimes I want to be like, kid, like, if you ever said that when I was younger, like, I would have knocked you through a wall, you know, type of deal. But I just think a lot of people, you know, keyboard warriors, you know, like in any forum, you know, any, you know, YouTube, anything like that. There's always a troll. There's always someone doing it,
Hiding behind the keyboard,
and it pretty much comes down to, like, I've learned over the years in like different industries or avenues, it's usually like someone talks crap or, you know, trolls because of the way they're feeling. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's another subject, another day. I'd like to. I don't know. My 5-year goal is to move down south somewhere warm. You know, I can't stand the cold. I'm not in the snow. Like, I love the snow, skiing, snowboarding when I was growing up. And then, you know, I got in the union and I worked outside my first winter on a boom lift 100 feet in the air on the airport. And I was like, I hate the winter. Like, I never want to be cold again, you know. But I don't know. I don't know in terms of my own personal growth or whatever, but like, as a part of this club, like, I'd really like to see this club, Boston Reefers, turn into like the premier reef club again. Like, I know with COVID, there's been a lot more, you know, like a lot more posting of the club. You know, we've got a lot more interaction. We got a lot, you know, membership's definitely grown. I have some big, or we have some big, like, you know, named industry names, like reaching out, asking about sponsorship and that type of stuff. So the word's getting out there that like Boston Reefers is becoming that club that Boston Reefers originally was, you know, for a little bit of, you know, a few year period, you know, obviously like the founders, you know, like anything in life, you do something, you get it to a point, you kind of get away from it, you know, life goes on, the next crew comes in and, you know, like we had one particular guy from back in the day, like stayed on and maintained and made sure like the club didn't, you know, die or close. And like, I'm forever grateful for that. But it's starting to become talked about more and more. It's not just Boston Reefers as like, oh, the fish club that's on Facebook, or all those guys over at Boston Reefers think their crap don't stink. Like, there's a lot more people like I'm approached like, hey, you know, like, I saw this post about you. Like, hey, I can see. And the cool thing for me, like, it's a way for me to give back to the community of just, you know, dealing with whatever, you know. And a lot of times I'll get private message, like, and again, like that cracking the whip or whatever. Like, I've had some people that like I've looked up to as like a mentor and respected, like OG guys and women back in the day, and they're like, listen, like, I appreciate the way that you run things, or I appreciate the way that you handled this. And like, it makes me feel good. You know, like, I'm like, oh, that was nice, you know, because a lot of times, like, I will deal with those people like I was talking about where, like, you know, somebody's selling something or, you know, someone's just being mean to someone. You're like, yeah, they're joking around, you know, like, grow thick skin, yada, yada, you know, but like, a lot of times, like people will, people will just be ignorant, and it's like, all right, well, if you do this, this is the result, and it's such like a woke world these days that it's like you can't. It's almost like I gotta mind what I'm saying,
Yeah, no, you got to be
I don't know if that makes
sensitive.
any sense, but
So here,
but some. Yeah, go ahead.
I was
Sorry.
just going to say, Joe Scavo's got a good suggestion for getting a little more camaraderie in the club. Paulie, BRS ski trip to Man River, operate at Reef Bums. I'll definitely be up for that. So, yeah, if you guys want to road trip it to the Man River Valley.
Joe's a big skier, big outdoors, man. Big outdoors.
Oh, yeah,
man,
I ski every day pretty much. So.
God love you. I remember the first time I went skiing, not downhill. I went cross country skiing. I woke up the next day sore in place. Like I didn't know I had obliques when I was a little kid, and like my obliques were sore, and hip flexors and all this wild stuff. But yeah, it's a good time. There's a lot of good people. Definitely a lot of good people. I couldn't do it, alone. Thankfully, they're all involved. As much as Joe likes to bust my balls about being from Quincy and he's from Weymouth, you know what I mean? Like. It's a good time, we have a lot of good discussions, a lot of like I look up to him for a lot of things because like he's one of the OGs, like I had a conversation with him today, like after he came and brought me down to Frag Farms, spent 10 hours with me that day just talking shop.
Yeah, that is invaluable. Doug Murray is thank you, Paul, for being a great leader and president for Boston Reefers! ReefBum, you have no idea how much Paul does.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I like to joke with people when I get aggravated and be like, that's it. Because, we're not that I'm the webmaster, we have one of those. I just, happen to be in that realm as well. Like I can make changes, like licensing and stuff like that for the web server and stuff like that. It's all in my name. So I joke with these guys sometimes and be like, I'm so sick of the crap, like behind the scenes. Like I'm just going to create my own domain and change Boston Reefers Society to Boston Reefers like AAHS, and give it that true Boston slang,
Joe says Greg Hiller likes the bumps. I love the bumps. So I could show you some awesome bump runs. You guys made it up.
Yeah,
hey,
that'd be a good time. I'd be like
go ahead.
Sorry. I'd be like the Saint Bernard with the whiskey barrel on my neck and watching you guys ski, but I don't think my body could handle it. I've
hosted plenty of ski weekends from friends visiting from like Connecticut and whatnot, and I mean that's obviously there's some guys that just kind of like to be more low profile in terms of the skiing and do the other stuff. So that's certainly an option.
I tried downhill. I was probably about 17. Went with a bunch of my buddies. My mother years ago, she was an avid skier, and she's showing me how to like snowplow. And my cool friends at the time, they I went out. I bought all this gear. I bought ski. Like I didn't even know if I liked it. Went to Herman Sporting Goods. I bought all the gear.
Herman Sporting Goods, man, that's a blast from the past.
Old school. They took me up to a Black Diamond, and that was it. Like ruined my experience. I never skied again.
There you go.
I mean, I've skied and snowboarded a couple of times, but never like got into it because of that experience.
Well, when you get healthy there, Paul, and that back heals up, you got to try it again. Insane Reefer, thank you again for the super chat. A beer on me again. Great conversation. Here's a question for you, Paul, from me.
Yep.
So you guys, the Magna, right? 2014 was in Boston.
2004 was in Boston.
2004. Okay. What are the odds of that happening again? Because all these Magnas are like out west or down south, and I would love to have one in the Northeast.
I mean, myself personally, like I'm willing. Like again, I don't know the logistics behind it. I don't know what went into it last time. I know from like looking through archives, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, like a lot of work for that type of show. I'd love to see Boston host Magna again. I'd like to see us involved with more, clubs like, we used to be involved with Lyra and like
Long Island Reefers Association.
Yeah, Long Island Reefers Association, day trips and that type of stuff. There was always like the original crews or the original groups that started around like Boston Reefers. Like I was saying, like Joe Scavo and Mo were part of Massena back in the day, and Massena was, owned Magna and XYZ, and there's just a huge laundry list of things that I'd love to see like take place and turn fruition or whatever. And I don't even know if that's how you use that word, but it is what it is.
Come to fruition, yeah.
Come to fruition, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see like Boston Reefers be able to lead by example for other clubs coming up. Like there used to be Connecticut Area Reefers Association.
Yeah, are they no longer?
They kind of fell apart.
CTARS.
So yeah, CTARS. Corey Page and myself. They had.
I think I might have been a part of that club at one point in time.
I think a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. They were somebody on Reef to Reef was talking about like bringing it back, and we're like, hey, like we're a sister club next state over, like we can. Here's my experience, on the back end. I had a few lengthy email conversations. I'm like, whatever I can do to help you guys, like get back to where where you want to be as a club, like I'm willing to help out. And then that's just like whatever. People get busy, COVID happened, yada yada. And then there's a guy that's a member of our club, our forum. He's now trying to revamp and take control and bring that club back to the club that it once was. But it's tough, man. A lot of people, life gets busy. A lot of people don't want to dedicate the time. The people that have done it see how much work it is, and they're like, oh, I get a chance to get out of that aspect and just be a member, like so be it.
And like, it's pretty much all volunteer work, right?
Yeah, 100% volunteer work. I'd love to sit here and say I'm making $50,000 a year from this, but I literally, as does everyone else on the board, like I still pay my $20 a year as a member. You know what I mean? Like we just had a bunch of merch, like made up for the show and help support the club and that type of stuff. And we all paid for our own merch. You know what I mean? I got a hooded sweatshirt, a new hat. I got a T-shirt on. I don't know if you can see it. Whatever. You know what I mean? And I mean that's all out of pocket. I mean none of that's free. It's just the thing that I like. Again, it's going back to like the sense of belonging. Like I belong something greater than myself, because again, it's not just a local club. Like we really care about coral conservation and educating the public of like, yeah, you can have this cool invertebrate or whatever, but no, it can't live, with Morton's table salt and tap water. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. A good friend of mine I met in college years ago. He got into an accident, whatever, and I was like, listen, I got this tank. I had, I think, 5 tanks running at the time. How many tanks? How many reef keepers actually only have one tank running? Is the real question. What I'd like to know, because I mean, I've had one tank probably twice in 18 years. Only one tank, and maybe it was just full of algae. You know what I mean? Or maybe it looks good, but depending on how involved I was at that particular time. But like I was like, hey, I got a tank. Like brought it over, and like I don't like to be the person to ask for handouts. Like it's just not in my nature, and I put a post up, and this is the whole sense of belonging and community. Like I say, hey, listen, here's the story about my friend. Like I set him up with a tank, a couple of clownfish, some invertebrates and stuff like that. Would anybody, I'll never ask this from anyone, but could somebody find it in their heart, maybe to donate something? And literally probably like 70% of the membership was like, yeah, let me know what you need.
That's awesome.
Offering equipment, new tanks, lights, like, stuff that's costing people hard-earned money. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'd like to maybe branch out. I think we're going to be starting like a scholarship.
Oh, beautiful.
One of the original guys, I mean, God rest his soul, just passed this past year. I mean, he was like the godfather of like saltwater keeping. If you talk to Joe Scalvo, I'm sure you'll meet him at some point. Wealth of information. You're like this guy Joe Venuti, like he was the OG of like using NSW, natural seawater, and like he knew everybody that's the who in the industry today. Like they were all tight knit 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
well, that's like you said, man. That's the one of the big advantages of being part of a club.
Yeah.
Is that you can really form a lot of relationships, have tight-knit relationships, and it's just an educational thing. Joe Scavo, thank you very much for that super chat. Really appreciate that, and enjoyed the comments in the chat. It's been very entertaining. But so, dude, it's almost 8:30. What
time's my curfew? 5 a.m. So 5 a.m. Keith, I'll talk all day.
You'll talk all day. Whoa.
I don't know if I have all the answers. I definitely don't have all the answers, but yeah, whatever you want to do. I mean, I'm just gonna play some Gran Turismo 7 for the rest of the night.
All right, man. Well, I think we'll wrap it up unless anybody else has some questions there in the chat. What final words do you want to leave us with there, Paul?
In a non-PC way, keep it simple, stupid. Get a logbook. Don't make changes too quick. It's like the old saying in like construction or like carpentry: measure twice, cut once. Don't do like me. Just in the last 2 months of cutting twice and measuring once. Go the opposite route.
Nothing good happens in reef keeping fast.
No,
so
not at
patience,
all.
Patience. That's
have a reef tank before you have a child. It helps with the patience.
I know. I put together a reef tank after we had a kid, and it was good and it was bad, but yeah. You need to have a certain amount of time dedicated to that reef tank, and I guess with a newborn it could be a little tough.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun with kids too. Just real quick, like I remember, like when I was first getting involved in the club and first getting involved in like the hobby, I had a 2.5-year-old and a newborn, and I remember like sitting in traffic for hours on a Saturday afternoon, hitting like all the stores up on the North Shore because I lived on the South Shore, Massachusetts, and or like a day would go all, the western part of the state, the middle part of the state. And like I think my daughter was 3 at that particular time. Like I was infatuated with zoanthids and like just how many colors you could pull out of like a zoa or a palathor or whatever. And like my daughter literally knew every variety. At the time, there was probably maybe 20, 25 morphs, 30 morphs. But she knew everything like word for word, like fish for fish, like all the scientific names. And I'm like, where the hell is she getting this from? So it was cool in that aspect. And now, like, I have friends now, like Mr. Scoville there, like he's one of the guys I've always looked up to. He's got a, 4 or 5-year-old daughter, and they've been to my house, and, my daughter had a lizard, and, they're coming to get clownfish and anemones and that type of stuff. And it's cool just to see the light, like with children, because they're so fascinated by everything, like seeing the fish or, seeing the starfish or the hermit crab or whatever. Like, it's definitely cool to be part of like a bigger picture and being able to expose kids to that. Cause that's really what it's about is like, yeah, we all already know like what's right and what's wrong to do in the world if whatever of taking care of the planet, so we can all be here and stuff. But like, starting the kids young, that's really where it's at. And
that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, that comes like another play with the, like I was talking about Frag Farm is like the guy that runs that. He's a marine science teacher, I believe. I don't want to, quote it incorrectly. Like he started a program to teach kids about how to take care of marine aquaria and stuff like that and conservation. And he's become so successful at it that he's been able to help other teachers, marine science teachers or whatever in other schools and set up programs, for their students to learn. It'd be cool. Like I remember my daughter she's going to be 20 next month. She was in her senior year of high school. She had a marine biology class, and the guy was like old school hippie. He was into like everything creature wise and stuff. And I was telling her, well, she told him about, like Frag Farms and, we as a club was going down there and stuff like that. And the guy was like really interested. And I was like, man, I wish he wasn't a senior in high school where I could, possibly reach out to companies or whatever, get some stuff donated and get some type of tank set up in that room. And now my youngest daughter's a senior and, she has the same class, but she's not really into it the same way. But who knows, maybe I'll, even if it has nothing to do with my kids, I'll still try to get involved and set something up at the local high school.
And, that's the future of the hobby, man. It's in terms of the youth, and it's vitally important to get them, into it to help kind of preserve the hobby for generations and generations. So yeah, very good point. Absolutely. Rob, upstate New York, man. Thank you so much again for another super chat. Keep it up, Keith. I appreciate that. Well, dude, listen, I want to thank you, Paul, for being on the live stream and taking off the moderator's hat and putting on the guest hat for this episode. I commend you for all the work that you've been doing for Boston Reefers Society, and I think it's great work, and it's you know, I think the thing that people can take away from this live stream is that being part of a reef club, there's a lot of benefits. It's so well worth the little money that it costs to be part of a club. How can people you know, find you guys and join the club?
Yep. So our forum is located at www.bostonreefers.org. We also have a Facebook group, you know, just Boston Reefers Society Incorporated. We have a Facebook page, like a club page, you know, that's just a nonprofit, you know, like a homepage, so to speak. We're on Instagram, Boston Reefers Society. What else? I think that's it. I'm sure there's another one. Twitter. I mean, obviously,
You guys tweet,
I created
huh?
all these sort. No.
Not too often.
One of the originals, Mo Kirby, he created a Twitter handle back in, you know, whenever Twitter came into play, and he's not. I don't know if he has a tank set up. I haven't talked to him in 6 months or whatever. But he was like, "Oh, we have a Twitter page. I'll see if I can remember the login information." So, you know, 6 months went by. I created our own page. I'd like to say, you know, I share on there regularly, but I don't, just like Instagram and everywhere else, because I'm involved, you know. Pulled 6 ways to Sunday on time, you know. Maybe if I can set up, I used to use an add-on, I can't remember what it was, a number of years ago, where you could send out a post and it would post to everything.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Like
Set up different times.
yeah.
Yeah, like an automatic thing. I'm sure I still have it, you know, bookmarked somewhere, but again, where do you find the time to look for it? You know, I gotta play Gran Turismo after this.
All right, dude. Well, listen, thanks again for being on the live stream, and I also want to thank everybody for tuning in. For the folks that contribute via the super chat, thank you very much, and also thanks to the sponsors of the live stream, Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. So, for those of you that don't know, we have the episodes of Rappin With ReefBum are also available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. And one last thing, if anybody wants to recommend a guest for the show, and it should not be yourself, then please DM me on Instagram. I always love to hear ideas for guests for future episodes. My next live stream will be on Thursday, March 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Not next week. I'm supposed to be in Florida next week there, Paul, so I'm going to be getting a little sunshine, getting out of the, yeah.
Lucky you.
I'm going to try to visit some friends down there, and might pay, supposed to pay a visit to Chris Meckley at ACI. Looking forward to that visit. So on the next live stream on the 24th, I'm going to have Tim Herman on, also known as Thurman on Reef to Reef. He is got the touch with SPS. I've had him on before, so I'm looking forward to that one. Should be another great show. Until then, be safe out there, and we will see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks again, Keith.
Thanks, Paul.
Greatly appreciate it. Take care.